Mr. Roddle, for you to be able to be promoted, to be able to speak if you're asked questions, I will need you to accept being promoted. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you can see me, but you can probably hear me. I had spoken with Jeff Tate earlier, and he said that until our agenda item came up to remain muted until such time. So
Yep. Go ahead and leave yourself muted and leave your camera off.
Thank you.
We'll give just another minute or so and see what other council members join us this evening.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening, Robin.
Good evening.
All right, we are going to go ahead and get started this evening. Welcome to our City Council study session for September 13th, 2021. Tonight's City Council study session will be held virtually and telephonically per Governor Inslee's Emergency Proclamation 20-05 and 20-28 and the City of Auburn Resolution Number 5581. City of Auburn has designated meeting locations as virtual for our regular, special, and study session meetings of the City Council and for the committees, boards, and commissions of the city. With that, Sean, will you please call the roll call?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember J-Raj.
He's excused.
Councilmember Malinga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
And Councilmember Trump Manuel.
I would say right now she's excused. All right, do we have any announcements, reports, and presentations this evening?
We do have a presentation on the agenda.
I do see that. Thank you very much. So tonight we will have a Inclusive Auburn Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consulting, and we will start this with Director Martinson.
Candace is out today, so
Okay.
I will be starting the conversation. Good evening. My name is Brenda Goodson Moore, and I am the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager. On July 15th, 2019, City Council approved Resolution 5427, the Inclusive Auburn Initiative, to accomplish the following goals: to eliminate systemic causes of disparities, racial and otherwise, in the city of Auburn, to promote inclusion and create opportunities for full participation for every resident and business in the city of Auburn, and to reduce and eliminate disparities of outcomes in our community. In this phase of the initiative, we will be partnering with DeMarsh Consulting to complete additional racial equity and systemic change throughout the city. I will now turn the screen over to Dr. Linda Perales, President, and Patricia Davis, Vice President of DeMarsh Consulting, who will introduce themselves, discuss their backgrounds and experience, and provide an overview of the work plan summary for the next 16 months of our contract with them.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Perales. While Patricia's getting our slide presentation online, I'll tell you a little bit about DeMarsh Consulting. We've been in business a bit over 35 years now. Those years have flown by, as they do. During that time, we've worked primarily with public sector organizations, from municipalities, county governments, state governments, divisions of state governments across the Northwest and in Utah. Our specialty has been working with business process improvements, from cost of service studies to implementation of technology, and working with teams and management to cause transformation. One of our core principles is that you can never improve the business mechanics without paying attention to the human dynamics of an organization. And so inherently, we've always been very, very cognizant of equity and inclusion, and helping organizations really pay attention to their voice of the customer. And so when their customers are different looking than the people that provide the services, there's always this issue of equity and service equity and providing environmental justice goals for the organization. So our attention to equity and inclusion has been longstanding before we've been tasked with the issue of systemic racism and understanding systemic inequities in organizations and how they come to be. So I'm always quickly noting for those in public works and community development and building and land use organizations that there are reasons that some neighborhoods don't have sidewalks. It's not a mystery. So it comes back to how we conduct community planning and how we build our comprehensive plan and how we reach out for funding and all of those yeah buts that we talk about in our search for understanding our statements of problems. So we have an avenue to close those gaps. And Patricia and I are really focused on helping us turn those yeah buts into solutions. So I'll let Patricia tell you a little bit about herself. We've known each other for a number of years and work well together. Oops, on mute.
Patricia, I'm sorry, you're still muted.
My mouth is moving, but I'm not saying a word. Good evening, and thank you all for having us. We are so excited to join you in this journey that you're on. And as Linda said, she and I have known each other for a great number of years. I met Linda when I was a manager at Microsoft many years ago, when they were just tiny and had about 7 buildings. That sort of ages me. Anyway, we hired Linda and her group of consultants to come in and do some business process improvement for us. And some of you have heard this story from me before, but it's worth telling again to a bigger audience. We were experts at creating processes, but what we did with those processes was not expert. We would create a beautiful document, we'd put it in the drawer, and then we'd continue doing work the way we always did it. So what I learned from Linda is how to implement as we were learning so that we could start measuring our progress right away. And I've carried that with me throughout my business career. And one of my dreams back then was to work with Dr. Perales and we remained friends throughout the years. And finally, as I was deciding to leave corporate world, Linda said, "Are you ready to jump ship and come work with me?" And of course, I said yes, because I so believe in what DeMarsh does, and that is that business process improvement. And the fact that in every engagement I've had with clients working with DeMarsh, diversity, equity, inclusion is embedded, and embedded before that acronym came up. That acronym is fairly new. And what I'm learning through this process is because when we use this acronym, it sounds like something that's going to go away. That won't be sustainable. What we are committed to is making this sustainable for you. And throughout, I'm gonna start the presentation in just a moment, and Linda and I will sort of ping pong through it to talk about what we're going to do and kind of how we're going to do it. But if you have questions along the way, raise your hand. I'm going to ask Brenda to speak up if I don't see a hand being raised, if you have a question along the way, but we'll definitely be able to talk through some of your questions at the end of our presentation. And as I get this started, bear with me. I want to make sure you can see my screen. So when you can see my screen, if I could get a thumbs up from a couple of you, that would be great. All right, here we go. All right, is this good? Can you see?
Yeah, we can see your screen now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. We appreciate that you are continuing to move forward on your diversity, equity, and inclusion program. Now, our goal is to guide you in keeping the work in alignment with your mission, your vision, and to support you, as Brenda said, in supporting Resolution 5427. And also with how you all work interdependently and cross-departmentally as you're serving the public. We want to acknowledge that the work that you've already been doing, especially with Racing to Equity, and we want to build upon that work, the positive parts of that work, especially those pieces that you found to be most valuable. Now, our goal is to support you in normalizing language and behaviors and to help you engage and become comfortable with those critical conversations that we have to have around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We believe it's important that every voice be heard in this process, no matter what side of the political aisle you're on or where you are in this journey. And we believe that it starts with leadership and helping leaders model behavior that they want to see and becoming accountable for those behaviors. Our approach is to meet with each one of your leaders individually and to better understand where you are now and where you want to be as you move forward in your desired outcomes. Now, again, we want to understand and honor the work that's already been done. Pull out those nuggets that really worked for you and really to bring those things to light. We're not going to be talking about critical race theory. We focus more on skills building, not training. Training is great, it builds awareness, but skills building is the thing that will help your folks create incremental change and change that's measurable. You need to understand that this work is never done, and we don't want it to feel like something that we just pile on top of an already overburdened workforce. We want to make sure that it starts becoming part of your DNA. You will hear language like normalizing, optimizing, and operationalizing. Those are great words. We believe in them, but we know that even though those words are used, you might not know how to normalize, how to optimize, and how to operationalize. That's where we come in. Linda, do you have anything to add? Again. So our approach to this work is that we believe that you will own this project. We partner with you to co-create and co-design every engagement, which is one of the reasons that we're going to meet with each of your teams individually, because we want to customize that work so that it's beneficial for the folks who are actually doing the work. We want to make sure that whatever workshops we provide for you connect back to the work that your folks are doing in the community. If it's disconnected, it won't stick. We want it to be sticky. We see this work, again, I'm probably going to say this a few more times, but this work is a journey, not a destination. Our expectation is that we're going to work with probably Brenda and Candace as our project managers in any steering committee that you might be putting together. We will refine the scope and the work plan based on the drafts that we already provided you. We are expert at staying within scope, within schedule, and within the price that we quoted. And we will definitely be identifying any risks that come up as they come up. We'll be providing monthly status reports, but in addition to those monthly status reports, we're going to let Brenda and Candace know what's going on weekly. So when you get your status report, you will not be surprised about anything. We also have a lot of experience working with remote workers, especially as we have with COVID. We were hired by King County Metro a few years ago when the viaduct was going down to help downtown businesses start remote work programs. So we understand some of those things that happen when you're a remote worker, how you can become isolated and all of those things that go into remote work. So we believe we're very good at working remotely and engaging people, whether they're remote or whether they're on site, and to do hybrid engagement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're going to do. Well, I'll go through each task in a little bit of detail. Task 1, which we've talked about a little bit, is the detailed work plan. Task 2 is we have recommended doing not a citywide survey, but a survey that encompasses the staff that you work with so that we can get a barometer. Task 3, which is the biggest portion of the work, we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. It is the implementation work phase, and then we'll talk about how we're going to wrap this all up for you in the next 16 months. Just a brief timeline, the 16 months, which we'll adhere to. And as I was talking about, task 1 is the project management and communication phase. Again, where we'll be providing a very detailed outline of your risks, how we're going to communicate, any working agreements that we might have, and we'll be providing those status reports. All right. Linda, do you want to add anything? Any questions yet?
I can speak somewhat to this equity audit policy and process review. This is sort of my sweet spot, being the analytical soul that I am and born an engineer and doing this sort of work. This is where you have quite a bit of demographic data, likely because of human services work in your community, and know quite a bit about your community. So tying that to individual service organizations and their service levels, an audit of your policies related to those service levels, whether those policies are there for risk management or there for guiding organizational practices, or how those policies work in your favor or in the favor of your customers, and how well they're understood by staff and supervision leadership. The city staff survey and interviews will all be comprehensive and then analyzed thematically, so that keeps them anonymous or blind to the individual, so that we get themes that can help us understand how each organization sees their customers and serves their customers, and the cross-functional independence and interdependence of the organizations. And the key community partner interviews. So those typically reach out to the advisory committees that you have and advisory commissions that you have within your community, and how diverse and functional they are, and how well they're chartered to provide information about service levels and about neighborhoods and so forth. And then again, those are put into thematic profiles so that you begin to understand from the third eye view what we see and what we're looking for. And of course, we truly believe in knowledge transfer, so that this kind of analysis becomes a way of doing analysis and a way of thinking about analysis of your processes and service levels. This kind of thing that I've done in a number of organizations and that DeMarsh has done strengthens the way that comprehensive plans are updated in the future, and the way capital programs are done in the future, and the way grant operations are done in the future, so that the outreach to underserved neighborhoods is enhanced. So next slide.
All right, task 3 is the program structure. And as I said earlier, this is going to be the biggest body of work. It will take the most time. And it encompasses most of the work that was based on the audit, the gap analysis, and the policy reviews that we performed in task 2. And we'll be working again in conjunction with your leaders and obviously your steering committee, and begin developing organizational commitments and an infrastructure across all city functions as we're conducting pre-assessments and readiness activities for your leadership team and your individual contributors. We want to gain consensus of what your inclusive goals and strategies are, and to help provide foundational training to embed those DEI principles and a shared framework at all levels of your government. We'll establish key performance indicators, strategies, measures. This is a hard one. So we want you to be able to measure that you're moving forward in your DEI maturity. And especially because of the impacts of COVID and disparities that are affecting many of your citizens right now, especially as they're trying to gain access to support and services. So we're going to ensure that you actually have a scorecard to measure your tasks and your performances. We'll provide guidance, recommendations, and facilitations for awareness and skills building. I have provided, and we have provided in our proposal sort of a list of some of the trainings that we might employ, but every single department may not need the same thing depending on where they are in their journey. Some of your departments may be a little further ahead than others. Some departments may decide this is not anything that applies to our staff. And it could be like the police department or public works, where, they're just out there not the police are fixing potholes, but public works might be out there fixing potholes. And they're going to wonder, those individual contributors, how this applies to me. So we're going to make all of our examples, all of our workshops applicable to what is happening within your city. Linda?
Yeah, I would just want to reemphasize cultural competency, skills building, and employee engagement will be relevant to everybody as they begin to learn what that means. And then developing and implementing an equity impact toolkit. While there's relevance, there's some parts of the toolkit that are relevant to everyone. Some elements of that kind of measurement in terms of equity impact are really essential decision tools to add to those decision tools that, say, for instance, engineering uses when they're creating a capital improvement plan, and they're making choices about which projects are more important than others. That equity filter is added to whether they're using a triple bottom line methodology or a triple bottom line plus sustainability factors plus reliability factors plus whatever other factors that are either driven by the sources of the funds or driven by the comprehensive plan or driven by a whole other set of variables that they feel bound by and are used to. Adding equity impact, we want to make that integrated into the decision tools they're already using, rather than say, no, you've got a new toolkit that you have to abide by. Everything we do, we want it tied to the work they already do. This is not a whole quote new program. This is an integrated way of doing the work you already do, so that you're more attuned to cultural competency skills. You're more attuned to the community you live in. You're more attuned to the social changes that are happening today, rather than say, no, you got to throw out all your old tools and use these new tools. That's not the point here. The point is here is to, as Patricia continues to say, build your skills so that you keep up. It's much like having a whole new set of computers. You got to build your skills. And today there's a whole new set of skills we call cultural competency and equity impacts and so forth that we've all got to learn. So we're sticking our elbow out and joining hands and joining arms with these folks and helping them step up to the plate and hone their old tools with these new tools.
And finally, as we go to wrap this up, we're going to fine tune all of those deliverables so that you have a full body of what we've done, the assessment work, the metrics, the recommendations to support sustainability, because we think that is probably one of the most key things. You are making an investment in your city and in your staff. And if it's not sustainable, it's not successful. And that is what's most important to us, is that this becomes sustainable and helps you become successful in building and growing as an inclusive, diverse, and anti-racist culture, and that this all ties back to your mission, vision, and values. That's kind of what I've got. And like I said, we're really excited to be on this journey with you and to make it palatable for all of your staff as they interact with your citizens. And I will ask for questions. Have I stopped sharing?
Oh, yes, you did. Thank you. Council questions. Councilmember Stearns.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you for your presentation. It just sounds really, really positive, and it's something that's important to us. You probably already know this, but 2 years ago, is it? Yeah, 2 years ago. Wow. We had 3 of us were elected to the city council. Well, 4 of us, but Bob was there too. But my colleagues, Councilmember Malenga and Councilmember Jairaj, we were the first, Native American, first African American, first Indian American to be elected to the council. And it's not that wasn't like a fluke. That was just, I think a reflection of where Auburn is. Auburn is, much more diverse. And so, I feel like it's, I'm really grateful to not just the people of Auburn, but to our mayor for really promoting the racial equity and the Inclusive Auburn initiative. So we we went through a lot of training, which I found incredibly helpful. But one of the things we talked about was creating, tools or lenses to go through decision-making issues. So for instance, earlier this year, we worked on a business and occupation tax. And I mean, as you can imagine with the tax, there are lots and lots of implications, but certainly, the impact or the effects and how it affects people of color or other disadvantaged communities was really important. So, those are the kinds of things where it'd be really good to have, a working tool. I'm sure the staff in the cities, they're all over it, but from the council, from my perspective, I'd like to be familiar with that tool as well. And, we do work on the budget every year. So having that, be part of our budgeting process is also really important. So anyway, I think I probably said enough.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and we're gonna work with your folks to sort of, because I know we're talking to finance at some point and administration at some point, to help them start recognizing where those lenses are and how to implement those lenses as they're doing their work.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions, Council? Councilmember Trout Manuel, good evening. There you are.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. My clock on the wall said I still had 15, 20 minutes left, and I didn't realize that my clock died on me. I apologize for being late. I also am really happy that Councilmember Stern mentioned that about the dais looking diversity. It took us a while. I was the first Latina to ever be elected in 124 years. I'm the mayor, the first woman to be elected as well. Wow. And it took us this long to constantly, I was bringing up that our dais did not represent our city. And it was nice that the mayor brought in the race equity, and I took the chair on that to lead it. And it was kind of challenging to get all of our council members to agree to have that to come into our city. So I give the mayor credit for bringing this up and asking me to chair it, and we got it done. And look at what our dais looks. It represents our city. So thank you for your information that you shared tonight. I got part of it, so I'm glad I got on to hear some of it. So thank you again.
Good. You're welcome.
Yeah, we're really excited to see just the diversity in the room here. We worked with the Department of Natural Resources recently, and their DEI council was made up of all white people. There was probably not, except for one Native American person at the table. And it was that they were not seeing who was not at the table. And so that is something that we think is important. And we see that you see who is at the table. So
yeah.
So we'll be pointing little things out like that we see that you all may not be seeing.
Yeah.
Councilmember Brown.
Yeah, thank you. I would really like to thank you for your information tonight. I will tell you this council is ready for this work, and really appreciate the mayor staying with this. And, as my friend at work tells me, that this work is like oral hygiene. You don't get done with it, you just keep working at it. So thank you very much for being here. We're excited about it.
Thank you. We promise we won't sit you in a room for 8 hours, that we will give it to you in small chunks.
Yeah. No 8-hour sessions. No.
That sounds good. Great.
And we understand you have a railroad to run.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Brenda, anything to add?
Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I'm excited. As you all know, we took that training together. What was that? Last year. And it was really great to go through that training with all of you, all 40 hours of it. So we're looking forward to starting working with each department, and then eventually making our way through City Council, and of course, reaching out to our community and opening up those lines of communication. So thank you so much for your support.
Great.
We look forward to it.
Yeah.
We're
Thank
very
you.
excited. Yes.
And I would like to add also that it's been an honor serving with this council. The diversity we have amongst this council has brought a new perspective to the city of Auburn. And it's a good working group. We bring our challenges together, we solve our issues, but together we are doing what we need to do as a council to improve the conditions, the life, and the overall processes we go through in the city of Auburn. Prior to my retirement, over 6 years ago now, in the King County Housing Authority, I was the senior staff advisor to the Housing Authority's Diversity Awareness Committee. And we worked on diversity, equity, and inclusion overall. And it was just a tremendous process working with that group of individuals and seeing this being carried forward in the city from the time I've been here to where we are now is really refreshing. And, moving forward is great. The Housing Authority now has an actual entire department devoted to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what we started quite a few years ago has now moved into a regular process at the Housing Authority. And with the mayor's guidance and with Brenda and Candace and others who have worked on this, we now have that in the city of Auburn. It is refreshing. It's encouraging. I know we have a long way to go, but I'm glad you folks are on board to take us to the next level. So I greatly appreciate your time tonight. And Dr. Perellis and Patricia, second time I've had the opportunity to hear this and see you. We welcome your participation and look forward to future reports. So great presentation. Thank you very much for being on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. All right, council, we will now move into our agenda items for council discussion this evening. And the first item is ordinance number 6831 with Director Tate.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, council members, and Mayor. Tonight, I'll be presenting and walking through some draft code amendments as part of Ordinance 6831, which is a proposal to amend Auburn City Code Chapter 2.98. Before doing that, I would like to introduce a couple folks who are joining us this evening. First of all, John Roddle. I see that John has activated his video, and many of you know John, perhaps all of you know John. John's joining us tonight in the capacity as chair of the Business Improvement Area Board, or the BIA Board. Also with us is Jen Francis, who is an economic development officer who joined the city just a couple months ago. I don't see Jen's video cooperating right now, but she is here, and I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce her since she's a new member of the team. And Jen's role is heavily emphasized in our downtown area right now. So she goes out and visits downtown businesses, introduces herself, makes sure that businesses know that she is a resource. She is helping staff the BIA, helping serve as point of contact with the Downtown Auburn Cooperative and such. So I'll spend just a couple minutes talking about the draft ordinance, and wanted to make sure that John and Jen were both here with me once we get to Q&A. So first of all, ordinance number 6831 proposes to modify chapter 2.98 of the Auburn City Code. And I provided an agenda bill. It starts on page 13 in your packet. And I don't want to repeat everything that's in the agenda bill, but I think there are a couple areas that I'd like to highlight. And I think I'd like to do that in terms of what this ordinance proposes to do and what this ordinance proposes not to do. And I'll start with what it does not do. It does not intend to modify the purpose of the BIA, the purpose of the board of the BIA, the geography of the BIA, and everything that is already written into city code on why we have a BIA, why we've had one for the last 30 plus years, and what their objectives are and what kinds of projects and work that they do within the downtown area. What the ordinance does propose to do is shift the funding for how the BIA operates. So just real quick, the current funding mechanism for BIA is that each business downtown, most businesses downtown, there are some exemptions, pay an annual rate, BIA rate, that is based upon the square footage of their commercial operation. So they pay that with their business license each year. So businesses will pay in November or December their annual BIA fee. And that fee has to be spent in the downtown area within the BIA boundary, which is on a map, defined on a map. And there are constraints in which those funds can be spent on. So that's defined in state law, which carries over into our city code as well. Businesses will pay anywhere from the low end of $150 per year as a BIA business, and up to $1,500 a year. So even the largest businesses, even if the math calculated out that they're supposed to pay more than $1,500, it's capped at that on the upper end, and it's capped at the lower end at $150 a year. When the city council adopted the B&O tax earlier this year, one of the things that the city council did when taking that action was to, I'll say, exempt the BIA fees. That's probably not the exact terminology, but it's to make sure that a business was not paying both the B&O tax and the BIA rate on top of each other. So the way that B&O tax, that B&O ordinance was structured was that if you calculate the B&O tax that you owe, you get to deduct the amount that you've paid into BIA fees. So making numbers up, if your B&O tax were to be $10,000 in a year and you paid $1,500 in BIA, you're going to pay $8,500 in B&O tax, so that you're not paying tax twice. But there's a couple of issues that we've identified with that. One is that the experience that the customer, the business owner has, won't really feel that way. Even though the city code says you can deduct the BIA fee, the customer is still going to have the experience of paying both. So even if using that $10,000 number, they could pay $10,000 once, or they can pay $8,500 once and $1,500 once. It adds up to the same amount of money, but it'll have the experience or the feeling that you're paying both of these rates. The second part is there's a complexity, software complexity around how to make all that work. And I provided a number of examples in the agenda, Bill. Not going to read through all of them, but one example is when you pay a BIA rate, you pay it in one lump sum for the whole year. When you pay B&O taxes, a lot of businesses will be paying that quarterly. So when you go to pay that tax, we have to develop or create some software integration that allows the B&O system to understand what a business owner paid for the BIA, and then it has to divide it by 4, and then it has to give you that deduction in quarters. There's other software integration work that would need to be done to make that all work seamlessly. And as you think about that more, I asked the question, well, in the end, the city is collecting that same amount of money one way or the other. So why spend all of the time and energy to try to make sure that we can deduct the BIA fees from the B&O tax when the bottom line is the same financially? Other part to this is that we did have a conversation with the BIA board and brought forward a concept to the BIA board. Included in your packet is a resolution that the board adopted and that Chair Roddle has signed, which is in support of a concept that would eliminate the BIA rate, keep the BIA functions all the same, but fund the BIA functions differently. And really, in this case, it's relying upon the fact that we are collecting business and occupation taxes and that the city would have the ability to earmark that amount of money through the B&O tax collection rather than the BIA rates. The other thing that I would mention about this concept is that most businesses in the downtown, or many businesses in the downtown, will fall below the threshold for which B&O taxes are due. So what this means for your downtown business community is that the BIA functions could remain in place, the investments remain in place, but their rates go down. So if a business falls below the threshold for paying a B&O tax, which many businesses in the downtown will fall below because they're small businesses, they won't pay the tax and they won't pay the rate, but the investment from the city budget will remain in place. So we think from a staff perspective, as we advanced the conversation, and I think from the BIA's perspective, that the shift in funding of how these functions will continue to occur is a win-win for the downtown business community. So that's really the background on how we got to this recommendation. I think I will just ask whether Chair Roddle, if you have any words to add. I don't want to skip that opportunity, but also I don't want you put you on the spot since I promised you that you didn't have to do a presentation.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, but I just want to mention that the funding mechanism has been in force for, oh gosh, 32, 33 years now, and it's been an extremely effective funding mechanism for keeping downtown vital. I think as we go forward, it's paramount that we have a collective force in funding, just as a merchants association or promotions department of any respective mall would have, and they can't survive without it. So has our funding mechanism been met with resistance in the past? Absolutely it has. And I think because of that, it's probably put some sort of a negative pall, if you will, over what it is that we've attempted to do year in and year out. And I think that the removal of the funding mechanism the way it is established now would shed a more positive light on a lot of merchants that are struggling right now, and you can certainly understand why, with COVID being prevalent for the last year and a half, and we've had 2 buildings burned down in the last 3.5 years off of Main Street. So we have an uphill battle, and I appreciate the city of Auburn being in partnership with the business community downtown. It's extremely important that we reestablish that, and we conversely want to maintain some civic engagement in helping the city do what we know it's important for them to do.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Chair Roddle, for your contributions. And I just have to say, historically, you know, the BIA has done so much for our downtown, and it's your leadership and those of downtown business owners that have made that happen. And so I just want to thank you for that. I have a question for Director Tate, and I'm not quite sure how to say it, but I'll just say it, and maybe hopefully you'll figure out what I'm trying to ask. You know, the situation has changed in terms of the funding mechanism if this ordinance gets passed, as was described very well by by you. My concern is my question is there a concern of equity for non-BIA businesses with respect to how the expenditures from the B&O tax proceeds will occur, where there's a differential perhaps in benefit for those business owners that are not part of BIA? Hopefully you understand what I'm asking.
Well, I think I do. And I think that we've already started the conversation internally about how to bring forward some ideas that can help with that. So a question that came up, I think, as we talked about this internally was, okay, you've got a BIA. If you look at a map, there's a line on a map that shows which businesses are inside of it, and then there's businesses outside of it. And just for council's, for context, I guess, there's about 200 businesses inside the BIA, and there's about 4,000 some businesses in the city. So the question I think that we've started talking about internally is, well, we know that a good, solid downtown core is something we need to invest in. I think everybody has an understanding or an agreement on that. I don't think there's argument there. But what about other areas where we're not making the same investments? So while we're not prepared to necessarily bring forward an ordinance today that would establish, I'm using the term loosely, but other BIAs, like the city of Seattle has like 30 or 40 different commercial areas that are different BIAs, and they have a little bit of self-governance in terms of businesses joining a board and businesses being able to participate in how funding decisions are made in their areas. I think that what we've been talking about internally is the possibility of bringing forward some other BIAs and some other areas in the city where there can be similar structure, and it becomes a great opportunity to talk about equity and how to create more voices in different neighborhoods, because, we don't, as staff, go to the BIA board and say, here's what decisions you should make on funding decisions and investments. They tell us. So they're well empowered to say yes or no, to raise their own ideas on how to make investments within their community. So there's a model to be able to replicate. And I hope that answers part of your question, or all of the question, that, there's value in considering how to expand this concept into other areas of our community that need investment.
Actually, Director Tate, that's the best answer I could have heard, I think, is we're looking at expanding so that others can participate and benefit from that kind of a program. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Stearns.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm really thank you, John and Jen, for everything you guys are doing for downtown Auburn. I too have a question for Jeff. Actually, I have a couple. When you talked about Seattle, were you talking about the Urban Village program?
No, they are business improvement areas are a term we use, and they're used in Seattle because there's an RCW that defines what a business improvement area is. So it is different, and it's really businesses coming. Right now, there's one. Dana forwarded me an email a week ago that showed one on Capitol Hill that the businesses are wanting to form. So usually this is generated from the business community, where the voice or the request is, can we self-tax so that we can do more in our area? And in Seattle, it's different. It's doing more street sweeping and some other types of things that this particular business community wanted to see, more garbage service on more days and things like that. So, but it is different than the urban village concept that Seattle has.
Oh, great, thanks. That's helpful. And then just I don't know if you have this answer off the top of your head, but can you give me a sense of how many businesses in the old system the BIA system were paying into the BIA, and how many businesses under the B&O system will be paying into B&O tax.
Yeah, part one of that question is pretty easy for me to answer. Part two is harder. Part one, so of the 200 or so businesses that are within the BIA boundaries, about 180 of those businesses pay BIA rates. There are some exemptions for BIA rate payers, which are like small nonprofits. We have a few small nonprofits, and they're exempted from the BIA rates. The B&O tax and how many businesses will pay into that, that's probably a question that Jamie could answer a little bit better. She's not here, but when we were calculating out what B&O tax revenue, what the number is that the city was hoping to, in dollars, the number that the city was hoping to generate. I mean, it's hundreds, if not, approaching 1,000 businesses that would pay into the B&O tax. Because remember, on the B&O tax, there's lots of businesses that will be exempt because they don't get to the gross receipt number that requires a B&O tax payment. And the other thing is there's lots of exemptions or deductions, I guess is the better word. So, we just had a conversation with a business owner last week about if you they're already paying liquor sales and they're already paying gambling taxes. So liquor taxes and gambling taxes inside of their business. Is this just another tax, the B&O tax? Well, they get to deduct those other taxes so that we're not collecting a tax for the same thing twice. So every business is so different because they're going to start reporting that information. And, so we'll get to a point where we understand that number. But, if I had to guess, I think it's, in the range of 800 to 1,000 businesses or so.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate just having more information when you get it. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you for that. And I think we recall Jamie did provide us during the deliberations and the analysis of the B&O tax, the number of businesses that would be included. And she also did lay out the exemption. So we can probably ask her to give us that briefing once again to give us a refresher on it, if you will, on that. And Jeff, thank you so much for being progressive and thinking of looking at expanding the BIA. I think it's an excellent opportunity for businesses outside of the downtown area. As we know, as John mentioned, the face of downtown has changed and will continue to change. And hopefully we'll be at a point where we have some very vibrant businesses coming back into downtown and be able to thrive as we know they can in our wonderful downtown area overall on that. Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Trout Manuel.
No, I also would like to thank Jeff, Director Tate, for bringing this to us and clearing it up, the ordinance. And also, as Councilmember DeCoursey said, looking into outside of just the downtown. I've been out there talking to the businesses, and some of them have mentioned about this meeting, and I told them I didn't know anything about it. So I'm so grateful that you brought it. Now it all makes sense. And John, thank you for your leadership in this as well. Downtown has changed so much, so it's going to be nice for all of us to work together and build that partnership. So thank you.
Glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Excellent, great. Thank you so much. And John, yes, thank you for being chair and for your leadership, not just on this, but for your many, many, many years of service within the city of Auburn overall. And Jen, welcome. We're so glad to see you on board, although we can't see you on the screen. We know we'll finally get a chance to meet you as we get a chance, hopefully, to come back into City Hall here shortly. So excellent, very much. And Director Tate, as always, thank you for an excellent presentation. So greatly appreciate your time this evening and for the presentation, and we look forward to bringing this to City Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move into ordinance number 6833, and that is with City Attorney Como.
And actually, Assistant City Attorney
And
Doug
Doug Ruth. Good evening, Doug.
is sitting in. Yes, thank you. Can you see me okay? Okay, great, excellent. So this ordinance does two things, both regarding bidding. A first note that you should have all been just sent a red and black copy of the proposed ordinance. That's the one that shows you the underline and strikeouts showing the changes. I think in your packet, you just have the proposed ordinance that shows the end result. So sometimes it's easier to see what actually is being changed. So that should be in your email box right now. So way of background, and I think all the council members are familiar that for public works projects, a city, any county must go through a bidding process. So that bidding process and that requirement is found in state code. And then city code provides a little refinement on that process on how the city of Auburn conducts bids. And there's various types of bids. You can do a formal bid, and the changes that we're talking about here generally regard a formal bid. There's also the short works roster, which is a little more informal way of doing bids that are smaller. And then there's the limited works roster, which is a slightly different process for even smaller bids. So part of that process, both in state code and in our code, Auburn's code, is that the clerk reads aloud the bids at the time of opening. And they have to be publicly read aloud. So we have two changes in this ordinance, and they're both in the first paragraph. And the first regards or addresses that the clerk is not always available to read aloud the bids at the opening time. She goes on vacation, she gets sick. So that's very, as it's written currently, it's very stringent that we must have the clerk do it, and it doesn't really fit with the realities of the circumstances. And the second issue, the second change, is addressing another reality, and that's the pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the city has been opening bids virtually so that we can continue the state's goal of reducing exposure. Now, the law requires publicly read aloud bids, and so there's always been some level of question on whether or not a virtual opening fits within that. So when the changes were proposed to allow for the designee of the clerk to open the bids to reflect the reality that the clerk is not always available, it was decided that let's clarify and make sure that it's clear that virtual bids can happen as well, because we'll be doing that for the foreseeable future. So the changes you'll see, if you're looking actually at the language in that first paragraph, is the addition of and manner. So it's the bids must, the advertisement of the bids must identify the time, location, and manner. So it would identify whether or not it's going to be virtual or in person. And then that second sentence, starting with unless, clearly allows for the openings to be conducted virtually. And then to address the clerk not being always available, in that first sentence, it now says the city clerk or designee. So those really are the two changes, just to address the realities of bid openings in 2021. And I'm open for any questions.
Questions for Doug, Council? I don't see any hands raised this evening for that. So Doug, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
And the presentation. All right, Council, our next items on the agenda are the municipal service discussions items for our special focus area. And as Councilmember J. Raj is not with us this evening, I'll be conducting this portion of the meeting as well. And we will begin that portion of the meeting tonight with the PAC update. And I'll turn the meeting over to Chief O'Neill.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor DeCourcy. This time I'm going to turn it over to PAC member Bob Holt.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Holt. I'm a retired police officer. I worked as a police officer for just shy of 35 years. My wife and I, we built our house in Auburn 33 plus years ago, and raised our son, who is grown and he's moved on. I live in the lower Lee Hill area, which is District 3. And in October, the PAC will celebrate, I think it's October, it's 1 year anniversary since we began. And if you think back about that, what was going on in our region and our country, we were pretty much glued to our televisions, watching destruction of our cities, our towns, a lot of rioting, a bunch of protesting. And I was also the one that was watching from our TV. And the more I watched, the angrier I got, because we were repeating something that happened back in the late 60s and 70s. And it goes beyond unfortunate. A lot of criminal activity. I found myself getting more and more angry, and I was at a loss what to do. And then I read the paper. There was an advertisement for an opportunity for citizens of our community, citizens of Auburn, to get on this police advisory committee. And I'm always looking for a way to be involved in the community, as well as I needed something positive to feel that I am helping making an positive impact in our community. Well, I was very fortunate, and I'm thankful that I was selected to be on this advisory committee. I represent retired law enforcement, and I'm just amazed at the other participants and members of our committee, and their inquisitiveness, their intelligence, coming from their perspective. They and me are learning a lot about today's policing. I personally, I bring a perspective of kind of what went on in the past, and we are in need of a change. And I really commend the mayor, the police chief, and all of the others in the city that had the foresight to bring this committee to fruition. I think we're started something that is very, very positive and will last a long time. A couple things I'd like to mention tonight. I don't think it'll take very long. 2 items. One, we held our first barbecue. It was up in the Lakeland Hills area, and it was a lot of fun. The second thing is our PAC scholarship program, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. A couple of other items is I want to thank the council for funding the Bolo Wrap program. I think this is, well, the PAC was able to see a demonstration of this tool being used, and I think it is will become a very useful, less lethal tool for our officers to use when apprehending somebody. And I thank you for that. Also, police officer body cameras and that ongoing discussion, and our PAC, our members, we've had some discussion about that as well, and we're certainly in favor of that moving forward and outfitting our officers with this tool. In talking with the chief, I asked what do the officers feel about having these cameras, and he says they're very enthused, and they're pretty excited about getting those. So that is I see that as a very positive thing coming from our rank and file. And in my experience in the past and helping develop cameras in cars, I feel it will reduce complaints coming from individuals when we're able to view these cameras and make decisions on the complaints. We also have 2 members of the PAC that are enrolled in the Citizens Academy, and just thought I'd bring that up. Okay, our barbecue. As I mentioned, we had a wonderful barbecue. It was, I got to thank committee member Jim Brass for spearheading this and getting us all energized to come together. And we met up at Sunset Park on August 19th. And many police officers came and interacted with us, stayed with us for almost the whole time of the event. The chief, Commander Adams, was there, and I got the opportunity to meet our new PIO, Colby Crossley, there, and I think he's a great addition to the team. He's a very interesting young man, and I really enjoyed talking with him. So in talking with a couple of the officers, there was well, let me back up just a little bit. There's a discussion that the PAC has had about how do we get officers to be more interactive with our citizens on a daily basis, on a regular basis, aside from a traffic stop or a call for service or something like that. And listening to a couple of the officers, there was an event. I think it was if I remember right, it was a 2-day event that the officers held and participated in 2 or 3 apartment complexes, and where they interacted with the kids in the apartment complex, and I could just see the enthusiasm and the how much of a good time these officers have interacting with these kids. And so that's an example of one of our desires to get officers to interact with our citizens on a daily basis, as opposed to a call for service or something in a not so good manner. Personally, I've and I hope some of the other PAC members, we've discussed this. Get the opportunity of a police officer that is in the right condition, and not in a serious call for service situation, to just say, hi, officer, thank you for your good work. And I do this whenever the chance I get. Every now and then there's an officer or a couple officers that'll be in my coffee shop I go to every day, and I take that opportunity to tell them that. And if I'm any indication of what the rest of the PAC is doing, they're also doing that as well. And it'd be nice to have to pass that message on to the rest of the citizens, just to say hi to our officers, just on a passing thanks for your good service. Okay, the scholarship program. So we were brainstorming a couple meetings ago on how the PAC can continue to positively have an impact on the community and its relationship with the police department. And I forget exactly who came up with the program, but a scholarship idea started to rise to the surface, and it caught on. So Chief asked, okay, who wants to be in charge of that? And I've got to thank Casey Bray for taking the lead on that. She has given me information that I pass on with you tonight, and it's in development. It's real close to being implemented, and we've collaborated with Green River Community College. Our PIO, and I just viewed this tonight, our PIO has put together a short video promoting this program with the mascot Chance, and it's if you get a chance to it, it's on Facebook, and it's kind of entertaining and it's kind of catchy. I really like it. Those interested in wanting to donate to the scholarship program, they can go online to donation form Green River College Foundation to donate money, and we're going to be raising money for the scholarship. The Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce will be putting in their newsletter. I think the 16th, if I remember right, to also promote this and to hopefully raise some money. The goal is to attract Auburn students that are interested in getting involved in the law enforcement field and getting education through Green River College. And so that's kind of where that is right now. There's an applicant process that will probably mirror something like their Green River College has right now for other scholarship programs. We're still in discussion about how that is developing. The applicants will take recommendations. I'm sure there will be some kind of bio that they will have to present, some sort of not knowing the nuts and bolts of it, probably some sort of resume. And once those are completed, there's I think there are two different areas or times where there are openings at the college for applying for these scholarships. And if we're quick enough, we might make the one that opens up in January. Hopefully we'll be able to make that. I really think we're far enough that we will be able to do that, so we can get the ball rolling on this. That's about it. That's about all that I have. Chief, do you have anything you can add?
I just want to say thanks to Bob for coming in and giving us a PAC update. We gave our last PAC update on July 12th. We've only had 2 meetings since then because our September meeting is this Thursday. So we had a meeting in July where we focused mostly on legislative reform as that was taking place. We also, then in August, we had our barbecue, and so there was only 2 meetings, so there wasn't a lot to bring a new update on. But we'll have another update in November and bring in another member of the PAC as we continue to rotate them through and give them an opportunity to share their experience, and also so you have an opportunity to get them and the rest of our community has an opportunity to get them or get to know them a little better. I would point out that I know some of us might be aware of some of the issues that were occurring up on Lee Hill, and we had PAC member Bob Holt and Kathleen that lives up there. They took on a leadership role for the PAC and started bridging the gap between the community members that were experiencing some issues up there in the police department, and they were instrumental in helping to alleviate some of those concerns and open lines of communication to the police department. And while the PAC serves many roles and many functions, I think that's one of the intended purposes of the PAC was to have leaders in the community that represent different groups in the community to help build that trust with the Auburn Police Department, other city services here at APD.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Yes, I have 2 questions. One is for Chief O'Neill. Robert mentioned about sorry, I am getting a sore throat, so the tool that the new tool the police officers are going to be using, will this be brought to the council so we can see what it is, or will we be going to a demonstration?
Sure, we could probably go ahead and schedule that under the next municipal services meeting in November. We recently got the bowler wraps in. We have 2 instructors that are certified in the department now, and so they're already carrying it and using it. And we've had 1 successful deployment so far that we put on our Facebook page. But now that all the bowler wraps are in, we're in the process of getting all of our officers trained that are assigned to the patrol division, and getting that equipment put out in each of the patrol cars. And so I think we can definitely schedule a demonstration to be part of the municipal services meeting in November. Commander Adams is in charge of the DT program, and he will be more than happy to put that demonstration together.
Thank you. And then the other question is for, was it Bob?
Yeah.
What, how many, you said there was several scholarships being given out, and how much are they for the people that apply for it?
Well, as I understand, it's in the range of $2,000 per. I've read some things that recommend or maybe get up to the level of 2 to 3 members of scholarships being given out, and I don't know for sure yet if that's going to materialize, but if we do some pretty good advertising and promoting in the schools, I think we'll get there.
That was my next question, to ask if you were going to promote it at the high school for the seniors that are graduating. So thank you very much for answering my question, and thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Baggett.
There we go. Finally couldn't find the button. Thank you, Dan and Bob, for the presentation and enlightenment as to what's going on at the PAC. A suggestion, I think I speak for some, if not all of the council members, that it would be really great if perhaps you would be able to invite some of the council members to attend some of these functions. I would have loved to go to that barbecue, but any one of these things that, within the confines of the Public Meeting Act I think we would enjoy participating in some of these activities, and the police officers as well, because one of the things I think we really want to encourage is our council to become more effective in communicating with our officers and those of the PAC, and everybody can get to know each other really well, because we are hiring new people. And I think that we really need to make sure that everybody knows everybody accordingly. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions, Council?
Hey, how are you
Okay,
doing?
I guess not. Chief O'Neill, thank you very much. Again, we really appreciate the PAC updates. And yes, I think it would be wonderful to have the opportunity to participate in different functions within the limitations that we have, as we know, overall on that. And Bob, thank you very much for being a member of the PAC and for your 35 years as a officer in the community. That is just really marvelous. So we really appreciate you being here and look forward to future presentations. So thank you both very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Last item on our municipal services discussion items is the 2021 fireworks update. Chief O'Neill, and I believe we have Commander Betts with us this evening.
We do. I will now turn this presentation over to Commander Betts. He was the commander that was lucky enough to be in charge of our fireworks deployment plan this fireworks season.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, Mayor, and Council. Thanks for having me here this evening. I'm just going to go over the does everyone have the document, the 2021 fireworks report? Okay, so I'll start with the background here. In 2021, after an 18-month lockdown that prevented us from engaging with our community for the most part, City of Auburn worked towards the goal of building positive community relationships rather than strict enforcement of fireworks. Auburn PD attempted to continue a goal of zero tolerance when fireworks violations were committed on city property, to include city parks. If officers were able to establish probable cause for either possession or discharge of illegal fireworks, they were to cite the appropriate city code. If officers were unable to establish probable cause for a particular individual and fireworks were present, the fireworks were to be confiscated for destruction. Officers were allowed to give verbal warnings on confiscation on the first offense when a fireworks code was cited and an infraction was issued. Officers were instructed to not engage in any situation that would potentially involve a use of force for a fireworks related offense where there was no immediate threat present. We continued our objectives from 2020 into 2021. Some of those included our improved communication with the Muckleshoot Indian tribe. Sonny Jerry was again the fireworks commissioner for 2021. It was a pleasure working with Sonny and Mike Jerry again this year. They were the primary contacts for myself when it came to issues related at the stands and discharge area. I had a meeting with Muckleshoot tribal attorney Josh Reich and Mike Jerry, and then KCSO Muckleshoot Chief Lloyd Dawkins early in 2021 to discuss options for strategy, enforcement, and procedures that the tribe was interested in for the 2021 season. And then the tribe did a great job of communicating with me in particular, gave me advance notice. Mike Jerry did when vendor displays were going to take place. I believe there were 3 again this year. And then we were able to use our social media platforms to notify citizens. I started that, and then when we hired Public Information Officer Colby Crossley, he helped out a lot with that as well. So that was huge for me. And then the tribe continued the same hours of operation for the stands in 2020. They were open until about 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and until midnight on Friday and Saturday. And they maintained the same hours of operation on July 4th till about 2 in the morning on July 5th. And we'll talk about this later, but it did close down earlier than 2 in the morning. And then the tribe would continue their agreement to not allow a discharge on the fireworks area after 2 in the morning. We were not notified. I was not notified of any restrictions at the stands related to COVID-19, but because that did impact it slightly last year, but the sales of fireworks did start on June 11th, which was 8 days earlier. They started on June 19th in 2020. The second goal was we wanted to have an active officer presence and enforcement in the neighborhoods with proactive fireworks patrols and in response to 911 complaints. So we had various emphasis patrols again this year. We started on June 11th to coincide with the opening of the stands, and these ran through July 5th. We maintained our deployment of 6 officers and a sergeant at the stands on July 4th. That turned out to be a big deal when they wanted the stands closed early. And then we had 1 sergeant and 6 officers in the north end on July 4th, 1 in the south end, and then 1 for our parks deployment. And we'll discuss that a little bit more later. I also this year, we deployed all 3 of our school resource officers, so that because the schools were impacted in 2020. So as a change, after reviewing our 2020 procedures, we deployed our school officers this year in 2021, and I believe it was a great impact on a great impact to save the schools and keep the fireworks activity from disrupting their parking lots and property. And then another new thing that we did this year was we deployed our community response team members, our bicycle officers, and our special operations sergeant, which is right now it's Sergeant Christian. And they went out from 6 a.m. in the morning until 4 p.m. And what they did is their main mission was just to go out and go into the parks, into Les Cove and all the other city parks, and try to clear folks out of there if there was any type of current activity, so that people could go enjoy the parks on July 4th and not have to deal with any garbage or any type of people sleeping right there. Then they could find them resources and try to clean things up a little bit for folks if they want to go enjoy the activities. And then we had our APD traffic officers were out with our traffic sergeant as well on July 4th from 6 in the morning to 4 p.m. And they worked on multiple blocking collisions and just try to keep the traffic flow going. So moving on down in this document for the results, during our 2021 fireworks emphasis, 12 officers worked a total of 156 hours between the beginning of our emphasis on July 11th and the end of it on July 5th. In 2020, we had 7 officers work 63 hours during this, during a much shorter time since we started on June 24th for our emphasis in 2020. And all of these shifts this year were filled. On July 4th, again, we had 18 officers and 3 sergeants that were assigned to the fireworks emphasis patrols. That does not include the 3 school officers as well. And then there's an increase from 14 to, that was an increase from 14 officers and 2 sergeants in 2020. Most officers worked as 2-man units other than the school officers. We attempted to use as many marked cars as we could for visibility. And we had 6, this deployment was split into 6 officer elements for command and control purposes and effective management. I already went over our community response team, and then the 6 officers and the 1 sergeant that were deployed to the fireworks stand, they were able to have a lot of community interaction. It's estimated that several thousand citizens came to the stands throughout the day and the evening. There were no significant injuries, thankfully, to any patrons on the evening of July 4th. There was 1 brush fire near the discharge area that was believed to be fireworks related. That is what prompted the request to close the stands, and that request was we did do that at their request. So no reported injuries to officers, thankfully, because that's the goal, is preservation of life and property for us on July 4th. In addition to positive community contacts. And then it took about, once the request was made at about 10 p.m. to close the fireworks stand, the discharge area, it still took about 2.5 hours because of the time they asked for it to be closed. It was nearly impossible to divert resources to assist those 6 officers and that 1 sergeant at that time, unless there was some type of a priority incident that they needed more response. So they were left to do it by themselves, and it took them about 2.5 hours to entirely work everyone out of there peacefully. Going forward into this report, 4th of July snapshot, we had 171 fireworks related calls for service between 11 a.m. on July 4th and 8 a.m. on July 5th. And you can see the calls by district. Again, it stays pretty consistent throughout the years here. We have, District 1 is usually pretty low. District 2 is usually pretty high. And then those are 2 of our District 1 is up in the northwest corner, District 2 northeast corner. District 3 is going to be Lee Hill. That usually stays consistent. And District 4 will be more downtown Les Cove area. District 5 down south, Lakeland, and then down in the south area, and then District 6 with a tribal property and the casino and that down there. So, And then we go July 4th over the years. As you can see, decently consistent. We had a high there, a spike in 2017. And then we've kind of gone up and down a little bit. We're up about 8 calls from last year. So decently consistent over the years. As we continue to go down there through this document, calls by district over the years, again, pretty consistent with District 2 being pretty high. And then the rest of the districts stay pretty consistent. They have their years where there's either a low or a high, but they stay pretty consistent. And then we compare versus the other Valley agencies. I believe last year we were second. This year we were third. Renton came storming through here, and they were 192 calls, and Kent had 231 on the same times of July 4th and 5th. And then we're right in the middle between Federal Way and Tukwila. I'm sorry, above Federal Way and Tukwila. And then again, fireworks goes down further in this document. Fireworks season for over the years, we have our calls for service overall from June 1st to 2021 to July 5th, 2021. Our calls for service were down a lot this year, and we don't know what that contributed to. I think last year, I would probably say that the big contributor to last year was that more people were home. I think more people are possibly out working or are able to go home. Last year we were locked down, so there were probably more calls as a result of that. And then we had 1 case written this year, 0 arrests, and 2 infractions were written as well. And then it goes into your patrol districts again. That the amount of calls from June 1st to July 5th that account for our 386 total. So District 2 was again our highest one. District 3 coming in as well with a close second, and then District 6. Then the rest of the districts there. So then we go down further in this document. We have a map of our calls. This is the part of the presentation where I should highlight or I need to highlight Joe Ryan. He's our crime analyst, and he puts a lot of this stuff together and puts a lot of work into it, because I'm not smart enough to do any of this. So just want to thank Joe Ryan and acknowledge him in front of council, deputy mayor, and the mayor. He does a fantastic resource for us. Confiscated fireworks, as we continue to go down here in this document. So this is something we focused on in the past. That strategy is something that we are looking at, and very few fireworks were confiscated in 2021. The mission focus was on positive community interaction and creating positive relationships between the community and the police department. During one incident, an officer did confiscate a few mortars from a community member. The officer asked for the community member's identification to initiate an infraction for fireworks possession. The community member became enraged and refused to provide identification. The officer chose to disengage with the community member rather than possibly engage in a confrontation that could result in physical force being used for a fireworks violation. I think this is key. Our instructions, our mission for our officers, our personnel during that July 4th day was preservation of life and property. We're focused on positive community contacts, and I told them, the officers and the personnel working that day, that getting into a physical fight or having a physical altercation for somebody over a fireworks violation or something related to that, when life and property there was no imminent threat of harm, then it did not need to be done at that time. So as a result of this tactic, many of our confiscations, our infractions were they were limited, few and far between. This community contacts, this was the focus for us. We wanted to cultivate a positive relationship with the community. We want to continue to foster that. So members of Auburn PD were given the order to document citizen contacts during the course of their duties on July 4th. There were approximately 1,500 citizens contacted throughout the day. Many of those were up at the stands and then down into the valley, in the city and the valley. These were done by our members of the Auburn Police Department. These were estimates calculated based by sergeants supervising units from patrol, traffic, community response, and fireworks emphasis units. In addition to fireworks calls, members of Auburn PD responded to traffic collisions, felony domestic violence incidents, brush fire, and numerous other calls for service. The members of Auburn PD that were assigned to the stands area did a tremendous job walking around and interacting with community members. I observed one positive interaction. It was posted by a community member on a TikTok account. I don't have TikTok, but someone directed me to it. And it was really cool to see. One of our newer officers, she just transferred up from, or lateraled up from Lewis County, and she just had a great interaction and just a very positive interaction with the community. So it was nice to see. And then Auburn PD members handed out around 1,000 Auburn PD stickers at the stands as well. So, and then our emphasis patrols between June 11th and July 5th generated about 500 community contacts during that period. So lessons learned, we go into the last page here of this report. So for 2021, the department again focused on areas that had the highest volumes of fireworks complaints in the past and shifted emphasis enforcement to those areas as needed. For the 5th year in a row, the RFA shared our Spec Ops channel, or our radio channel, facilitating communication between the police and fire. It was nice to have fire. We have such a great relationship with our fire department, and we're able to communicate with them, and they're able to use the substation that we have, that the tribe enables us to have. And so they're able to have quick response to the stands without having to fight traffic up Auburn Way South on July 4th. Cooperation with the tribe was again excellent. Tribal representatives for the stands were in constant communication with the police department. Tribal council member Mike Jerry was a consistent point of contact for me and Auburn PD. An emphasis was placed on patrolling the parks, which reduced the amount of firework debris left behind. There was an emphasis placed on education leading up to the 4th. And this will only increase into the future because of having Colby Crossley. He was just tremendous. So there were several social media posts made regarding legal and illegal fireworks. And this will just be increased in the future. So the traffic on Auburn Way South was backed up for most of the afternoon and evening due to the left turn lane into the stands discharge area. Working with city engineers, I was able to get a hold of them even in the middle of the night, which was nice. I believe it was Scott Nutter that I was able to get a hold of, and it was just nice to have them available and assisting us as possible, as much as they could. So we're going to potentially try to increase traffic by keeping that left turn arrow open longer, but Scott wasn't able to keep it open long enough. So traffic backed up well on Auburn Way South. It was well past 12th Street Southeast as I viewed it. But what we're going to do next year is we're going to, Auburn PD traffic unit members are going to be adjusted to work 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. to assist with this traffic flow so that we, if possible, we can just man intersections. Because what happened was even if we opened up that left turn lane and people still went outbound towards Enumclaw, they would just go to the very next intersection and then turn around or clog up that left turn lane. And so we were still getting the backup. So we will work on that next year with our traffic unit members to assist with that process and speak with Scott as well. Auburn schools were almost completely left alone by community members with fireworks. This was a change from 2020, and the Auburn PD school resource officers will continue to work on the 4th. City parks were still a popular area for citizens to congregate and discharge fireworks. At one point, parks enforcement units encountered 150 to 200 people at Isaac Evans Park and Lescove Park. Now, I was at both of those parks, and that is, I probably underestimated because both parks were full and people took their vehicles and drove into the park. And then and utilize the park that way. So it was probably more than that, but I didn't want to go exaggerate numbers there without having a relatively firm count. Most of the community members were cooperative, but some community members were very disruptive and refused to follow commands by police. In my 15 years and in my 2 years of leading fireworks enforcement, I have never seen such overt non-compliance from community members. So they would be warned about fireworks and they would shoot off fireworks right in front of your face or right in the middle of 12th Street Southeast. And these were mortars. These were not just sparklers. So patience and negotiations were used to gain compliance with those community members, which we eventually did. For 2022, Auburn PD will work with parks to add more signage to the parks, in addition to gaining access to keys and training for activating city park watering system to activate sprinklers as a tool to dissuade citizens from accessing the parks after dark if needed. This was a unique year due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic and because of recent events related to law enforcement and citizens. There was a concern that due to current anti-police sentiment by some citizens, confiscating fireworks could potentially lead to an unnecessary use of force situation between Auburn officers and citizens of Auburn. Gladly, Auburn police officers working fireworks shifts on July 4th did not have to respond to any citizens' resistance while enforcing state law and city code. That means that we had no use of force incidents that day, which is tremendous. It speaks volumes to the training and the practical application that our police officers are able to work with citizens who are overtly non-compliant. The number of fireworks calls were consistent with previous years, despite the fact that we focused on community interactions instead of enforcement. And we had no official complaints were received as a result of the conduct by members of Auburn PD on July 4th. So that is the end of my document. I just want to again say that the conduct and the training by your police officers here in this city is tremendous. And I think it is evidenced by their conduct on July 4th in the face of adversity and overt noncompliance, which is unlike I have never seen in my past. And now I'm ready for questions. It looks like Councilmember Baggett.
Councilmember Baggett, yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sam, you really looked like you really had your hands full that night. And I'm sure that will probably persist through next year, but maybe we'll be a little smarter than the average fireworks person. A question I had for you, and you're working with the tribal council member, Mike Jerry. Did you happen to mention, or did anybody mention anything about the possibility of moving that discharge area and the fireworks stands to another area as that hotel becomes more and more constructed?
Thank you for the question. And no, specifically, I've only heard rumors and I didn't hear anything from Mike. So I'm not sure if what the status of that is. That's something I could ask in the future. But I'm sorry, I don't have any information on them moving the discharge area.
Yeah, having attended the Disneyland discharges over in Anaheim in California many times, we would sit over into the where the hotels are, kind of across from the park, and to watch all the fireworks. And let me tell you, the reverberations off of those multi-story hotels was deafening. And I would just imagine that maybe that might be a course of conversation with Mike or some of the other tribal members, council members in the future. The other thing I wanted to point out is that from my front porch, I could see a lot of the stuff going on over at Isaac Evans Park. And it was like the entire city was kind of lit up with mortars and all kinds of other large fireworks that I know that they probably acquired from Muckleshoot. I didn't have to go to any parks. I didn't have to go to any place to watch it. It was right there in front of me, and we just had a very good display. It's unfortunate that we had those kind of incidences over at the parks that you mentioned, and perhaps maybe in some non-lethal form in the future, we can find some way to dissuade those individuals from doing those kinds of things. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very comprehensive, and I appreciate all the work that you and your team did for the people of the city during that time, prior to 4th of July and after 4th of July, because they were continuing on even after the 4th. So, as you know, thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Hi, Sam. Thank you also for a great presentation. I live up here on the Muckleshoot Hill, and I am so happy to hear you say that next year you're going to be looking to solve some of the problems with the traffic, because it does cause a big problem for the people who live up here. Also, I just want to say thank you for your task force, your group that facilitate the hill up here, because I get a lot of complaints from my neighbors about the fireworks, and every year is like a war zone up here. But I have to say this year it was kind of, I think it was kind of mild. And I even ran into Council Member Mike Jerry at the farmer's market, and I thanked him for them closing the fireworks earlier than what they normally did. It was nice to have them stop at a certain time and not have them going. But as you know, the people around here were still letting them go. But I thanked him for that. And I just want to thank you for a great job that you're doing. And also don't underestimate yourself. You're pretty smart yourself.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to thank the commander and the chief for, for just, it seemed like things worked out really well. And, just the amount of attention and the amount of care that the department exercised, the fact that there were no complaints, really speaks volumes to, the excellent work that our city's law enforcement did. And, we're all safe, and we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Commander, thank you for the report, very detailed report, and for the participation that you and your officers have every 4th of July. It was really nice to hear that we had no significant injuries this year. That is a testimony to everybody doing what they do, participating along with the folks who are in the discharge areas and other areas as well. Many years ago, I used to do commercial fireworks shows. I was a power technician in California, and that's when we used to light them off with flares before the technology came into place with electronics. And these things were, as we all know, they're powerful, and they can do a lot of damage. And being up there and being visible and doing the work you're doing is preventing those injuries and perhaps preventing some other serious things happening. So appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do. And we also appreciate the cooperation from the tribe and the folks you work with there as well. So thank you all for the presentation. And Chief, anything else to add?
I just want to say, fireworks season is one of the most difficult things that we have to deal with every year here at the police department. It goes on for at least 6 to 7 months. Commander Betts did a fantastic job navigating that. He was the primary point guy in charge of that, but I think we can all be really proud of the command staff, specifically him and Commander Adams, who for the last 2 years have worked together on this. Usually it's just one commander from the patrol division that's responsible, but they've worked together as a team the last 2 years, and both of them have come in on the 4th of July to ensure that things run safely and sure that our community tries to have the best 4th of July that they can. So I think it's a excellent demonstration of their teamwork and professionalism and dedication to the community. And I'm grateful to have both of them as a part of my command staff. So great work.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. That's perfect. And Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thumbs up, Commander, to you and your staff. Perfect. All right, great. Thank you again. That brings us to the end of our discussions this evening, Council. Any other discussion items? Any new business? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Thank you, everybody, for your participation this evening. Have a great evening and stay safe out there. We are adjourned.